The fluorescent lights overhead started to blur into streaks of white, and Claire Morgan knew she was going down. "Ma'am? Ma'am, are you okay?" The cashier's voice sounded like it was coming from underwater. Claire gripped the edge of the conveyor belt, her knuckles going white as her vision tunneled. The small grocery store in downtown Boston suddenly felt like it was tilting sideways. "I'm fine," she whispered, but even she could hear how weak her voice sounded. "I just need—" The words died in her throat as her knees buckled. She felt herself falling, watched the linoleum floor rushing up to meet her face, and knew this was going to hurt. But instead of hitting the hard ground, she fell into something solid. Strong arms caught her mid-collapse, and she found herself pressed against an expensive wool coat that smelled like cedar and something darkly masculine. "I've got you." The voice was deep, commanding, and completely unfamiliar. Claire's eyes fluttered open to see a face that belonged in an old Hollywood film. Sharp jawline, dark hair swept back from a high forehead, and eyes so intensely blue they looked almost unnatural under the harsh store lighting. He had to be in his early 50s, with silver threading through his temples in a way that only made him more striking. "You're bleeding," he said, and there was something dangerous in his tone that made the small cluster of customers who'd gathered take an instinctive step back. Claire's hand flew to her neck, to the cream-colored turtleneck she'd carefully selected that morning, specifically to hide the evidence. But the fall must have pulled the fabric down because she felt the cool air of the store on her throat, on the bruises she'd covered so meticulously with makeup and high collars for the past 3 weeks. "It's nothing," she said quickly, trying to pull away from him, trying to adjust her collar back into place, but his grip on her arm was firm, not painful, but absolutely unyielding. "Don't!" His eyes had gone cold, glacial. He was staring at her neck like he was memorizing every mark. "Who did this to you?" the cashier gasped. An elderly woman in line dropped her shopping basket, and Claire wanted nothing more than for the floor to open up and swallow her whole. "Please," Claire whispered, finally managing to jerk her turtleneck back up. Her face was burning with humiliation. "Please, I just want to pay for my groceries and leave." The man holding her studied her face for a long moment, and Claire had the strangest sensation of being truly seen for the first time in months. Then he looked at the cashier, who was staring with wide eyes. "Ring up her items. Add them to my bill." "That's not necessary," Claire started. It wasn't a request. He helped her stand, keeping one hand on her elbow, as if he thought she might collapse again, which, given how the room was still spinning slightly, wasn't entirely unreasonable. "When's the last time you ate?" Claire opened her mouth to lie, to say she'd had a big breakfast, but something about those blue eyes made deception feel impossible. "Yesterday? Morning." His jaw tightened, a muscle jumping there. "Yesterday morning," he repeated slowly, as if tasting the words and finding them distasteful. He turned to the cashier. "Add whatever's on the hot food bar, soup, sandwich, whatever she needs. Really, I can't let you— You can, and you will." He guided her toward a small seating area near the store's deli counter, and Claire was too dizzy, too exhausted, too overwhelmed to fight him. He lowered her into a chair with a gentleness that seemed at odds with the steel in his voice. "Sit. Don't move." Claire sat, watching in a daze as this complete stranger orchestrated everything with the efficiency of a general commanding troops. Within minutes, the cashier had brought over a container of chicken soup, a turkey sandwich, a bottle of water, and a sports drink. The man, she still didn't know his name, sat down across from her and slid the soup in her direction. "Eat." "I don't even know who you are," Claire said, but she was already reaching for the spoon. Her hands were shaking badly enough that some of the broth sloshed over the side. He reached out and steadied her hand with his own. His fingers were warm, and Claire noticed the expensive watch on his wrist, the gold ring on his right hand, the way his suit probably cost more than her rent. This was a man who commanded attention, who was used to being obeyed. "My name is Victor Volkov," he said, and Claire noticed how several people in the store went very still at the name. "And you are?" "Claire. Claire Morgan." She managed to get a spoonful of soup to her mouth. It was generic store-made chicken noodle, probably from a package, but it tasted like heaven. She hadn't realized how hungry she was until the warm broth hit her stomach. "Claire Morgan," Victor repeated like he was filing the name away. "Tell me about the bruises." Claire's spoon clattered against the container. "I can't. Can't or won't. Does it matter?" She forced herself to meet his eyes, to inject some steel into her own voice. "I appreciate your help, Mr. Volkov, but this isn't your concern." "It became my concern the moment you collapsed in my arms." He leaned back in his chair, completely relaxed, but there was nothing casual about the way he watched her. "Those bruises are recent. Some are already yellowing, which means they're at least a week old. But I saw fresh ones too, purple and new. And the way you moved when I caught you, you're protecting your ribs." Claire's hand instinctively went to her left side, where Derek had kicked her 2 nights ago. The movement was automatic, defensive, and Victor's eyes tracked it like a predator following prey. "He's still hurting you," Victor said softly. "Isn't he?" The concern in his voice, the gentle way he asked, broke something inside her. Tears welled up in Claire's eyes, and she hated herself for it. She'd worked so hard to keep it together, to maintain the facade that everything was fine. She had a master's degree in library sciences, a job she loved at the Boston Public Library, friends who cared about her. From the outside, her life looked perfect. No one knew that her boyfriend of 3 years had slowly, methodically, turned into her nightmare. "It's complicated," she whispered. "No." Victor's voice hardened. "It's actually very simple. Someone is putting their hands on you, and that cannot continue." "You don't understand. Derek, he wasn't always like this, and I don't have anywhere else to go. The apartment is in his name, and I've been saving up, but it's so expensive in Boston, and where is he now?" The question was so abrupt, so sharp that Claire blinked. "What? This Derek, where is he right now?" "At work. He's a financial analyst downtown. He works late most nights." She paused, then added quietly, "Which is the only reason I can even be out right now. He doesn't like me going places without permission." Victor stood up so suddenly that his chair scraped against the floor. For a moment he looked like violence personified, like barely leashed rage wrapped in an expensive suit. Then he visibly controlled himself, straightening his cuffs with precise movements. "Finish your food," he said. "All of it. I need to make a phone call." He walked a few feet away, pulling out his cell phone, and Claire sat there with her soup, wondering what on earth was happening. She'd lived in Boston her whole life, and even she had heard whispers about the Volkov family. They owned half the real estate in the city, controlled the docks, and ran businesses that existed in the shadows, between legal and very much not legal. Victor Volkov was, if the rumors were true, the head of the Russian mob in New England, and he'd just bought her lunch and looked ready to commit murder over the bruises on her throat. Claire's phone buzzed in her purse. She pulled it out with trembling fingers and saw 3 text messages from Derek, each one more demanding than the last. "Where are you? Answer me right now. You better be on your way home." Her chest tightened with familiar anxiety. She glanced at the time. She'd been gone almost an hour. Derek would be furious. He'd told her she could run to the store for milk and bread, nothing else, and she was supposed to be back within 30 minutes. Victor returned to the table, pocketing his phone. His eyes went to her face, then to the phone in her shaking hands. "He's checking up on you." It wasn't a question. Claire nodded, her throat too tight to speak. What happens if you don't go back right now? She thought about the last time she'd been late, about the way Derek had grabbed her hair and slammed her head against the kitchen counter, about the way he'd apologized afterward, crying, swearing it would never happen again. About how it had happened again just 2 days later. "Nothing good," she managed. Victor held out his hand. "Give me your phone." "What? No, I can't." "Claire." He said her name with such authority that she found herself handing over the phone before her brain caught up with her body. He looked at the messages, his expression going darker with each one. Then he did something that made Claire's heart stop. He started typing a response. "No, please, you don't understand. She's not coming home," Victor said aloud as he typed. "Not tonight. Not ever. If you attempt to contact her again, you'll answer to me." He hit send before Claire could stop him. "What did you just do?" Claire's voice came out as a strangled whisper. "Oh my God, what did you just do? He's going to kill me. When he finds me, he's not going to find you." Victor set her phone down on the table. "And if he does, he'll have to go through me first, which I promise you, he doesn't want to do." "You don't get it." Claire was standing now, panic clawing at her chest. "You think you can just send a text message and that fixes everything? Derek is going to lose his mind. He's going to come looking for me. He knows all my friends, knows where I work, knows..." Her phone started ringing. Derek's photo flashed on the screen, a picture from their first year together, when he'd still been kind, when she'd still believed in fairy tales. Victor picked up the phone and answered it. "She told you not to call," he said calmly. Claire could hear Derek's voice on the other end, high and angry, demanding to know who the hell Victor was and where Claire was. "My name is Victor Volkov. Claire is under my protection now. You have 2 choices." Victor's voice remained conversational, almost pleasant, which somehow made it more terrifying. "Choice 1. You accept that your relationship with her is over. You never contact her again. You move on with your life. Choice 2. You attempt to reach her, to find her, to hurt her again. And I spend a considerable amount of my resources making sure you regret that decision for whatever remains of your miserable life. Which would you prefer?" There was sputtering on the other end of the line, Derek trying to bluster, to threaten, to demand. Victor's expression didn't change. "I see you've chosen option 2. How disappointing." He ended the call and pocketed Claire's phone. "We're leaving." "Is there anything you need from the apartment you share with him?" What?" Claire felt like she was moving through a dream. "I can't just leave. My clothes, my books, my grandmother's jewelry. I'll have everything collected and brought to you. Make a list. But you're not going back there." He took her arm gently but firmly. "Not now. Not ever." "Where am I supposed to go?" "You're coming with me." Claire tried to pull away. "I don't even know you. You could be..." "Dangerous?" Victor smiled, and it was not a comforting expression. "Yes, Claire, I am very dangerous, but not to you. Never to you." Something in his voice, in the absolute certainty of those words, made Claire believe him, which was insane. She should be running in the opposite direction. This man was a criminal, probably a killer, definitely someone her mother would have warned her about. But when was the last time someone had looked at her bruises with rage on her behalf? When was the last time someone had fed her, had stood between her and harm, had made her feel like she mattered? "Okay," she heard herself say. "Okay." Victor's expression softened almost imperceptibly. He guided her out of the store, one hand on the small of her back, and Claire noticed how everyone gave them a wide berth. There was a black SUV waiting at the curb, engine running, and a man in a dark suit opened the back door for them. Claire slid into leather seats that probably cost more than her car. Victor got in beside her, and the door closed with a heavy, final sound. "Take us home, Mikhail," Victor said to the driver. As the SUV pulled into traffic, Claire watched the grocery store disappear behind them. She was leaving everything, her job, her apartment, her carefully constructed normal life. She was getting into a car with a man she didn't know, a man who operated outside the law, a man who looked at her like she was something precious that needed protecting. She should be terrified. Instead, for the first time in 3 years, she felt safe. Victor was on his phone again, speaking in rapid Russian. Claire caught her name a few times, along with what sounded like addresses and instructions. He was orchestrating something, moving pieces on a chessboard she couldn't see. When he hung up, he turned to her. "My people are going to your apartment. They'll collect your belongings. Is there anyone who should be warned about Derek? Friends? co-workers, my supervisor at the library. Michelle, she's been worried about me. Claire's voice was small. I've been calling in sick a lot lately. Give Mikhail her contact information. We'll make sure she knows you're safe. Victor paused. You'll need to take a leave of absence from work, at least for a few weeks. I can't afford. I'll handle it. You can't just handle my entire life. Claire finally found some of her fight. I have responsibilities, bills, student loans. I can't just disappear because some what? Victor's tone was mild, but his eyes were sharp. Some stranger decided to help you? Some criminal decided you were worth protecting? Claire flushed. I didn't mean, yes, you did, and you're right to be cautious. He shifted in his seat to face her more fully. I'm not a good man, Claire. I've done things that would horrify you. I operate in a world where violence is currency, and loyalty is bought with blood. But I have one rule that I never break. I do not tolerate men who hurt women. Ever. Why? Because I watched my father beat my mother for 15 years, before she finally found the courage to take me and my sister and run. We had nothing. She cleaned houses, worked 3 jobs, kept us fed on nothing but her determination and love. And when I was old enough, strong enough, I made sure my father understood what it felt like to be afraid. Victor's jaw tightened. He died a broken man. I didn't lose sleep over it. Claire stared at him. You killed your own father. No, but I made sure he wished I had. Victor reached over and very gently adjusted her turtleneck, which had slipped down again. His fingers barely grazed her skin, but she shivered at the contact. I was 19 and stupid and angry. These days I have more efficient methods. You're going to kill Derek. It should have sounded like a question, but it came out as a statement. Only if he's very stupid. Victor withdrew his hand. I've made it clear that you're under my protection. In my world, that means something. If he's smart, he'll take the out I've given him and disappear. If he's not, he shrugged. Well, that's his choice. The SUV turned into an underground parking garage beneath a building that looked like it cost more than Claire's entire neighborhood. Mikhail parked in a spot marked reserved and came around to open their door. Victor helped Claire out, and she had to tilt her head back to take in the building. It was all glass and steel and modern architecture. The kind of place that had doormen in uniforms and marble lobbies. You live here? She asked. The top 3 floors. He guided her to a private elevator that required a keycard to access. You'll have the guest suite on the 2nd floor. It has its own bathroom, sitting room, and balcony. If you need anything, there's staff available 24 hours. The elevator opened directly into his penthouse, and Claire stepped out into a space that looked like something from a magazine. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Boston Harbor. The furniture was modern but comfortable, all clean lines and expensive fabrics. Original art hung on the walls. She recognized a Rothko, or at least something that looked like one. This is insane, Claire whispered. This is safe, Victor corrected. The building has security. No one gets up here without my permission. Derek couldn't reach you if he tried. A woman in her 60s appeared from what looked like the kitchen. She had kind eyes and wore an apron dusted with flour. Ah, Victor, I wasn't expecting you home so early, and with a guest. Her accent was thick, Russian, and warm. You must be Claire. I'm Anya. I keep this one fed and his house in order, since he can't be trusted to do either himself. Victor actually smiled, a real smile that softened his whole face. Anya, this is Claire. She'll be staying with us for a while. Can you show her to the guest suite? She's had a difficult day. Anya took one look at Claire, at her too thin frame, her bruised throat, her exhausted eyes, and her expression shifted into something fierce and maternal. Oh, little one, come with me. We'll get you settled. Get some proper food in you, and then you can rest. Claire found herself being shepherded down a hallway by this grandmother-like woman who seemed to run Victor's household with cheerful efficiency. The guest suite was bigger than the entire apartment she'd shared with Derek. The bed was massive, covered in what looked like Egyptian cotton sheets. The bathroom had a soaking tub and a shower with multiple heads. There was a sitting area with a couch and a television, and French doors that opened onto a small balcony overlooking the harbor. "This is too much," Claire said. "Nonsense. Victor has plenty of space, and it rarely gets used." Anya was already turning down the bed, fluffing pillows. "You look exhausted, dear. When's the last time you had a good night's sleep?" Claire couldn't even remember. Every night with Derek had been a gamble. Would he come home drunk and angry? Would he wake her up in the middle of the night to pick fights? Would she have to barricade herself in the bathroom and sleep in the tub? "I don't know," she admitted. "Well, you'll sleep well tonight. No one disturbs you here unless you want to be disturbed." Anya patted the bed. "There are clothes in the closet. Victor keeps things on hand for guests. They might not fit perfectly, but they'll do until your things arrive. Why don't you take a shower, change, and then come to the kitchen? I'll make you something to eat. Real food, not that garbage from the grocery store." By the time Claire had showered and changed into soft pajama pants and a cashmere sweater that probably cost more than her weekly salary, she felt almost human again. She followed the sound of voices to a massive kitchen where Victor was sitting at an island, jacket discarded, sleeves rolled up, drinking what looked like whiskey. He looked up when she entered, and something in his expression made her pulse quicken. "Better?" he asked. "Much. Thank you." Claire sat on one of the stools across from him. "Though I still don't understand why you're doing all this." "I told you, your mother, I know. But there are shelters, resources, programs. You could have just given me a phone number and sent me on my way." Anya set a plate in front of Claire, pierogies, perfectly golden, with sour cream and fresh dill. The smell made Claire's mouth water. Victor watched her take the first bite, watched her eyes close in pleasure at the taste, before he answered. "You collapsed in my arms. I saw what someone did to you, and I realized in that moment that I had a choice. I could hand you a phone number and walk away, or I could make sure that no one ever hurts you again. I chose the latter." "But why?" He took a sip of his whiskey, considering. "In my line of work, I rarely get to be the hero. I've made my peace with that. But every now and then, the universe presents an opportunity to do something unambiguously good. You were that opportunity. So I'm what? Your good deed? Your shot at redemption? Maybe." He smiled slightly. "Or maybe I just couldn't stand the thought of you going back to him." They sat in silence while Claire ate. Anya fussed around the kitchen, preparing what looked like enough food to feed an army, humming to herself in Russian. Victor's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his expression hardened. "What?" Claire asked, fear spiking through her. "Derek showed up at your apartment, tried to force his way past my people." Victor's voice was clinical, detached. "He's being detained." "Detained?" Claire's fork clattered onto her plate. "What does that mean?" "It means he's in a warehouse across town, having a conversation about appropriate boundaries and the consequences of ignoring warnings." Claire's stomach turned. "You're having him tortured." "No." Victor met her eyes. "I'm having him educated. There's a difference. When my people are done with him, he'll be given a choice. Leave Boston permanently, tonight, with enough money to start over somewhere else. Or face what happens when he refuses to walk away from something that no longer belongs to him." "I don't belong to anyone," Claire said sharply. "Poor phrasing. You're under my protection, not my ownership. There's a difference." Victor set his phone down. "But Derek doesn't see you as a person, Claire. He sees you as property. So my people are explaining to him in terms he'll understand that you are no longer available to him, and that attempting to reclaim you would be very, very bad for his health. And if he doesn't leave?" Victor's smile was cold. "Then he'll discover that there are worse things than death." Claire should be horrified. She should be calling the police, demanding that Victor release Derek, insisting that this wasn't how civilized people handled problems. But all she could think about was Derek's hands around her throat 3 nights ago, squeezing until she saw stars, while he told her that she was worthless, that no one else would ever want her, that she should be grateful he even bothered keeping her around. "Okay," she said quietly. Victor raised an eyebrow. "Okay?" Okay, I trust you to handle it. Claire picked up her fork again. And if that makes me a terrible person, then I guess I'm a terrible person. It makes you human. Victor refilled his whiskey. And it makes you smart. Derek was never going to stop, Claire. Men like him don't. They escalate until someone stops them or they kill the person they're hurting. You know this. She did know it. She'd been planning her escape for months, squirreling away money, researching apartments in different cities, trying to figure out how to disappear. But Derek had been monitoring her bank accounts, her email, her phone. He'd isolated her from most of her friends. The walls had been closing in, and then she'd fainted in a grocery store and literally fallen into the arms of the one person in Boston who could make Derek disappear. What happens now? Claire asked. Now you rest. Tomorrow we'll figure out the details. I have lawyers who can help you file for a restraining order if you want, though I doubt you'll need it. I'll have my accountant set up an account for you so you have access to money. And we'll see about getting you back to work when you're ready. I can't take your money. You're not taking it. You're accepting temporary assistance while you get back on your feet. Victor's tone brooked no argument. Pride is a luxury you can't afford right now, Claire. She hated that he was right. She hated being dependent on anyone, especially someone she'd just met. But she also knew she had less than $300 in her bank account, and Derek had the passwords to all her other accounts. Thank you, she said, and meant it. Over the next week, Claire learned what it meant to live in Victor Volkoff's world. Her belongings arrived within 48 hours, carefully packed, with nothing broken or missing. Derek left Boston that same night. She knew because Victor showed her the surveillance footage of him loading his car and driving toward the interstate. Michelle from the library called, worried but understanding when Claire explained, in carefully edited terms, that she'd left an abusive relationship and needed some time. Victor's lawyers appeared with restraining order paperwork. His accountant set her up with enough money to cover 6 months of living expenses, which Victor refused to consider a loan. And every evening, Claire and Victor had dinner together. It started casually. Anya made too much food, and Victor pointed out that it was wasteful for them to eat separately, but it quickly became the part of Claire's day she looked forward to most. They talked about everything: books, politics, the city, their childhoods. Victor was surprisingly well-read, with strong opinions about Russian literature and an unexpected love of mystery novels. He never touched her beyond the occasional hand on her back when they walked. He never came to her room. He was unfailingly polite, respectful, almost old-fashioned in his manners. But Claire felt the tension building between them like a storm-gathering force. She noticed the way his eyes followed her when she moved through a room, the way his hand would flex when she sat close to him on the couch while they watched old movies, the way his voice would drop to something rough and warm when he said her name. And she noticed her own responses, the way her breath caught when he smiled at her, the way she found excuses to touch his arm or his shoulder, the way she'd started dressing more carefully for their dinners together. It was Anya who finally addressed the elephant in the room, 3 weeks into Claire's stay. You know he's falling in love with you, Anya said conversationally one morning while they made tea. Claire nearly dropped the teapot. What? No, he's just being kind. Victor Volkoff is many things, but kind is not the word I would use. Anya smiled. Loyal, yes. Protective, absolutely. Ruthless when necessary. But kind. No, kind is what you are to strangers. What he feels for you is something else entirely. He hasn't said anything. Because he's terrified of scaring you away. You came to him from a man who hurt you. Victor knows better than anyone that you need time to heal, to trust again. So, he waits. Anya poured hot water over the tea leaves. But waiting doesn't mean he doesn't feel it. Watch his face when you laugh, Claire. Watch what happens when someone mentions Derek's name around him. That man would burn down the city if it would make you smile. Claire spent the rest of the day watching Victor, really watching him, and realized Anya was right. It was there in every gesture, every glance, every small kindness. Victor Volkoff, feared mob boss, ruthless criminal, dangerous man, was treating her like she was made of spun glass and starlight. That night at dinner, Claire made a decision. "I kissed someone today," she said casually, watching Victor's reaction over her wine glass. His fork froze halfway to his mouth. "Oh? Well, technically they kissed me, very enthusiastically." Victor set his fork down very carefully. "I see. His name is Marcus. He's very handsome, lots of muscles. Claire, he's a golden retriever who belongs to your neighbor on the 14th floor. I met him in the elevator." The relief that washed over Victor's face was almost comical. Then he laughed, a genuine warm sound that made Claire's heart skip. "You're terrible," he said. "I'm observant." Claire set her glass down. "Anya says you're falling in love with me." The laughter died. Victor's expression became shuttered, careful. "Anya talks too much." "Is it true? Would it matter if it was?" "Yes," Claire said simply. "It would matter a great deal." Victor pushed back from the table and walked to the window, his back to her. For a long moment he just stood there, looking out at the city lights. "I'm not the right person for you," he said finally. "You should be with someone respectable. Someone who works a normal job and comes home at normal hours and doesn't have blood on his hands." "Probably." Claire stood and walked over to him. "But I don't want someone respectable. I want someone who sees me, who protected me when I had nothing to offer in return. Who feeds me pierogies and watches old movies with me and looks at me like I matter. You do matter." Victor turned to face her, and the raw emotion in his eyes stole her breath. "You matter more than you should. More than is safe." "Safe for whom?" "For both of us." His hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing over her cheekbone. "I'm 53 years old, Claire. I've lived a hard life. I have enemies who would hurt you to get to me. I work in shadows and violence. And you deserve sunshine and peace and all the things I can't give you. What if I don't want sunshine?" Claire leaned into his touch. "What if I want exactly this?" "You don't know what you're asking for." "Then show me." Victor's control, that iron discipline he'd maintained for 3 weeks, finally shattered. He kissed her like a man starving, like she was oxygen and he'd been drowning. His hands were gentle despite the passion, cradling her face like she might break. Claire kissed him back with everything she had, pouring 3 weeks of longing and trust and blooming love into it. His hair was soft under her fingers. His chest was solid beneath her palms. And when he pulled back, they were both breathing hard. "I love you," Victor said, the words rough and raw. "I've loved you since you fell into my arms in that grocery store. And I'll love you until the day I die. But Claire, you need to be sure. Once you're mine, I don't let go. I don't share. I don't walk away. I'm a possessive bastard who will probably drive you crazy with how protective I am. So you need to be absolutely certain this is what you want." "I've never been more certain of anything." Claire smiled up at him. "I love you too, Victor Volkov. I love your grumpy face and your fierce heart and the way you look at me like I'm precious. I love that you feed me and protect me and gave me back my life. And I want to build something real with you, if you'll have me." Victor's answer was another kiss, deeper this time, full of promise and possession, and a tenderness that made Claire's eyes sting with tears. 4 months later, Claire stood in Victor's study, looking at the framed photo on his desk. It showed her laughing, head thrown back, hair caught by the wind, on the deck of Victor's yacht. She was wearing a sundress and no makeup, all the bruises long since faded, her body healthy again from Anya's cooking and regular meals. She barely recognized herself. "Are you ready?" Claire turned to find Victor in the doorway, devastatingly handsome in a tailored suit. Today was the reopening of the library wing that Victor had anonymously donated $2 million to renovate. Claire had gone back to work a month ago, and her supervisor Michelle had been thrilled to have her back. "Almost." Claire walked over to him, straightening his already perfect tie. "Are you sure you want to do this? People will figure out it was you who made the donation. Good, let them. Victor caught her hand and pressed a kiss to her palm. I'm tired of hiding how I feel about you. He'd been patient, letting their relationship develop privately, giving Claire space to heal and grow stronger. But lately, he'd been pushing for more. For public acknowledgement. For permanence. Claire knew what was coming. She'd seen the velvet box hidden in his desk drawer last week. She'd pretended not to notice, but her heart had been racing ever since. The library reopening was exactly as boring and wonderful as Claire expected. There were speeches and ribbon cuttings and tours. Victor stood beside her the entire time, his hand on the small of her back, making it clear to everyone present that they were together. Michelle pulled Claire aside at one point, eyes wide. That's Victor Volkov. The Victor Volkov. And he's looking at you like you hung the moon. I know who he is, Claire said with a smile. And you're okay with everything he is? He's a good man, Michelle. He's just not always a lawful one. Afterward, Victor took Claire up to the roof of the library, which was closed to the public but had a stunning view of the city. I used to come up here when I was younger, Claire said, leaning against the railing, when my life felt too small or too hard. I'd look out at all these buildings and dream about the people inside them, about all the different lives being lived. And now? Victor stood beside her, close enough that she could feel his warmth. Now I'm living a life I never could have dreamed of. She turned to face him. With you. Victor pulled the velvet box from his pocket and dropped to one knee. Claire's hands flew to her mouth, even though she'd known this was coming. Claire Morgan, you walked into my life by accident, and you've become the most important part of it by design. You make me want to be better than I am. You make me believe that even someone like me can deserve something good. I know I can't offer you a normal life. I can't promise you that every day will be easy or safe. But I can promise you that I will love you fiercely and protect you absolutely, and spend every day for the rest of my life making sure you know how precious you are to me. He opened the box to reveal a stunning ring, a deep blue sapphire surrounded by diamonds that caught the fading sunlight. Will you marry me? Yes, Claire said through tears. Yes, absolutely yes. Victor stood and slipped the ring onto her finger, then kissed her as the sun set over Boston, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Below them, the city hummed with life. Somewhere in that sprawl was the grocery store where Claire had collapsed, the apartment where Derek had hurt her, all the pieces of her old life that had brought her to this moment. But up here, in Victor's arms, with his ring on her finger and his heart in her hands, Claire finally understood what it meant to be truly safe. Not because she was weak or needed rescuing, but because she'd found someone who saw her strength and loved her anyway. Someone who'd caught her when she fell and refused to let her go. I love you, she whispered against his lips. I love you too, Victor said. My brave, beautiful girl. Mine forever. And as the lights of the city began to twinkle to life below them, Claire smiled. She'd gone to the grocery store for milk and bread. She'd left with everything she never knew she needed. The first sign of trouble came 3 days before the wedding. Claire was at the library, cataloging a new shipment of rare books, when her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. She almost ignored it. She got spam messages constantly, but something made her open it. The photo loaded slowly, and when it did, Claire's blood turned to ice. It was a picture of her, taken that morning when she'd left Victor's building. She was wearing the cream cashmere coat he'd bought her, carrying the leather bag he'd surprised her with last week. But it was the red circle drawn around her head, the crosshairs superimposed over her face, that made her hands start shaking. The message below read, He took something from me. Now I take something from him. Claire's phone clattered onto the desk. Michelle looked up from across the room, concerned. Claire, you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. Claire couldn't speak. She grabbed her phone with trembling fingers and called Victor. He answered on the first ring, like he always did when she called. What's wrong? He could hear it in her breathing, in the silence before she could form words. Someone sent me a photo. Of me. This morning. With crosshairs and... Victor, someone's watching me. Don't move. His voice went deadly calm, the tone he used when giving orders that would be followed without question. Stay exactly where you are. Mikhail is 2 blocks away. He'll be there in 90 seconds. Stay inside the library, stay away from windows, and don't leave the building until he comes for you. Do you understand? Yes. I'm on my way, Claire. His voice softened just slightly. You're going to be fine, I promise you. The line went dead. Michelle was at her side now, hand on Claire's shoulder. What's happening? Should I call the police? No police. Claire stood on shaky legs. I need to move away from these windows. She'd barely made it to the back office when Mikhail appeared, moving through the library with the efficient purpose of someone trained for exactly this kind of situation. 2 other men Claire had never seen before flanked him. Ms. Morgan, Mikhail said, his accent thick, we're taking you somewhere safe. Now. The drive to Victor's secure location, not the penthouse, somewhere else, somewhere Claire had never been, took 15 minutes. They went to a building in Southie that looked abandoned from the outside, but had state-of-the-art security once you got past the rusted door. Mikhail led her down a hallway and into a room that looked like a command center. All screens and computers and serious-faced men who went quiet when she entered. Victor was there, jacket discarded, sleeves rolled up, phone pressed to his ear. When he saw Claire, he ended the call mid-sentence and crossed the room in 3 strides, pulling her into his arms. Are you hurt? No, just scared. Claire pressed her face against his chest, breathing in his familiar scent. Who sent that message? Victor's arms tightened around her. I have suspicions. Let me see your phone. She handed it over and he pulled up the message, his expression darkening as he studied the photo. He passed the phone to a man at one of the computers. Trace this. I want to know who sent it, where they sent it from, and every place they've been in the last month. Now. The man nodded and started typing frantically. Victor turned back to Claire, cupping her face in his hands. This is my fault. I should have anticipated this. Anticipated what? What's happening? He led her to a chair and sat across from her, still holding her hands. 3 weeks ago, I made a decision that affected someone's business interests. Someone who doesn't handle setbacks well. I knew he might retaliate, but I thought I'd taken sufficient precautions. I was wrong. Who is he? His name is Carson Reed. He runs drugs through the port, or he did until I decided that particular pipeline needed to be permanently closed. I shut down his operation, seized his product, and made it clear that anyone who tried to restart that business would answer to me. Victor's jaw tightened. Apparently, he's decided that hurting you is an appropriate response. Claire's stomach dropped. He wants to kill me to punish you. He wants to threaten you to control me. There's a difference. Victor stood, pacing now, all coiled energy and barely suppressed rage. He's trying to force my hand, to make me back off and let him rebuild his operation. What he doesn't understand is that threatening you doesn't make me more willing to negotiate. It makes me more willing to end him. Victor. Boss. The man at the computer looked up. The message came from a burner phone, but we traced the photo metadata. It was taken at 6:47 this morning from a vehicle parked across from your building. We're pulling traffic cam footage now. Find the vehicle. Find everyone who was in it. And find out where Carson Reed is right now. Victor turned to Mikhail. Double the security on the penthouse. I want 3 men in the building at all times, and 2 watching the street. No one gets within 100 feet of that entrance without being cleared. Already done. Claire watched Victor orchestrate everything with clinical precision, watched him transform from the gentle man who brought her coffee in bed to the ruthless mob boss who commanded an empire. This was the part of his life he'd tried to shield her from, the darkness he'd wanted to keep separate from what they had together. The wedding, Claire said quietly. We should postpone it. Victor stopped pacing and looked at her like she'd suggested they burn down the city. Absolutely not. Victor, if someone's trying to kill me, they're trying to scare you, to scare us both. And if we postpone the wedding, if we let Carson Reed think his threats are working, then we've already lost. He crossed back to her, kneeling so they were eye level. I'm not letting that bastard take this away from us. You deserve your wedding day, Claire. You deserve to walk down that aisle in the dress you picked out and say your vows and start our life together. And I'll be damned if I let some desperate drug dealer rob you of that. But what if something happens? Nothing is going to happen. I'm going to make sure of it. Victor kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. Trust me. Claire wanted to argue, wanted to point out all the ways this could go wrong, but she looked into Victor's eyes and saw absolute certainty there. This was a man who'd built an empire out of nothing, who'd survived decades in a world where most people didn't last 5 years. If anyone could keep her safe, it was him. Okay, she whispered. I trust you. The next 72 hours were a masterclass in controlled chaos. Claire was never alone. Victor assigned a rotating team of guards who followed her everywhere, with the kind of professional discretion that made them nearly invisible. Anya tripled her grocery orders and turned the penthouse into a fortress of comfort food and grandmother energy. And Victor became a man possessed, working 18-hour days to track down Carson Reed and neutralize the threat. Claire learned more about Victor's operation in those 3 days than she had in the previous 4 months. She saw him on conference calls with people who spoke in code about shipments and territories. She watched him study security footage until his eyes went red. She witnessed the cold calculation he brought to violence. The way he could discuss breaking someone's fingers in the same tone he used to ask Anya about dinner plans. It should have terrified her. Instead, it made her love him more. Because underneath all of it, underneath the ruthlessness and the power and the barely leashed rage, Victor was doing this for her. Every decision, every move, every threat he made was about keeping her safe. On the morning of the wedding, Claire woke to find Victor already dressed, sitting on the edge of the bed watching her sleep. Did you sleep at all? She asked. A few hours. He brushed her hair back from her face. Carson Reed was spotted in Providence 2 hours ago. My people are watching him. He's not getting anywhere near Boston, and he's definitely not getting anywhere near you. So we're safe? We're as safe as we're going to be. Victor smiled, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. And in about 8 hours, you're going to be my wife. Which means anyone who wants to hurt you is going to have to accept that they're declaring war on the Volkov family. Most people aren't that stupid. Most people? Carson Reed is a special kind of stupid, but he's also desperate, which makes him dangerous. Victor stood, buttoning his cuffs. I have some things to handle this morning. Mikhail will stay with you while you get ready. The ceremony is at 4. I'll see you at the altar. He kissed her, long and deep and full of promise, then left before Claire could ask any of the questions burning in her mind. The morning passed in a blur of hair and makeup and the beautiful ivory dress that made Claire look like something out of a fairy tale. The wedding was small, just close friends and family, held in a private estate outside the city that Victor owned and had been securing for weeks. Michelle was there, and Anya and Victor's sister Katerina, who'd flown in from Chicago. Claire was in the bridal suite, putting the final touches on her makeup when she heard shouting from downstairs. Her door burst open and Mikhail was there, face grim. We need to move you, now. What happened? Carson Reed's car was spotted 5 miles from here. He slipped past our perimeter. Mikhail was already guiding her toward a back staircase. Victor's orders are to get you to the safe room until we can neutralize the threat. Claire's heart was pounding, but she let Mikhail rush her down the stairs and through a maze of hallways to what looked like a wine cellar. He pressed something on the wall and a section swung open, revealing a reinforced room with monitors and supplies. Stay here, Mikhail said. Don't open this door for anyone but me or Victor. Then he was gone, the door sealing shut behind him with a heavy thunk. Claire stood in the safe room in her wedding dress, watching the security monitors that showed different angles of the estate. She could see guests milling around in the garden where the ceremony was supposed to happen in less than an hour. She could see Victor's men taking up defensive positions around the perimeter. And then she saw Victor himself, striding across the front lawn toward the gate where a car had just pulled up. Claire's breath caught. She couldn't hear what was being said, but she could see Victor talking to someone through the car window. Could see the way he gestured, sharp and commanding. Could see when he stepped back and the car door opened. A man got out. Mid-40s, expensive suit, the kind of face that looked cruel even from a distance. Carson Reed. Claire watched in horror as Reed pulled out a gun, but Victor was faster. He moved with the kind of speed that spoke of decades of practice, disarming Reed in a motion so smooth it almost looked choreographed. The gun went flying. Victor's fist connected with Reed's face, and then Victor had Reed on the ground, knee on his chest, and was saying something Claire couldn't hear, but could read in every line of his body. This ends now. More cars arrived, police cars, which confused Claire until she saw the officers deferring to Victor, taking Reed away in handcuffs. Victor had connections everywhere, apparently including in the Boston PD. 5 minutes later, the safe room door opened and Victor stood there, slightly disheveled, blood on his knuckles, but smiling. Sorry about that. Where were we? Claire launched herself at him, not caring about her dress or her makeup or anything, except that he was safe. He was whole. He was here. You're insane, she said against his chest. You just fought an armed man on our wedding day. I couldn't let him interrupt the ceremony. Anya spent 3 days on that cake. Victor pulled back to look at her, and the love in his eyes made her breath catch. Also, I made you a promise that nothing was going to happen, that I'd keep you safe. I don't break my promises, Claire. Is it really over? Reed's going away for a very long time. Turns out he had outstanding warrants. And the gun he pulled on me violated his parole. He'll be in federal prison by morning. Victor smiled. And if by some miracle he gets out, he knows that coming after you again would be the last mistake he ever makes. We're safe, sweetheart. I promise. Claire kissed him, not caring that she was probably ruining her lipstick, not caring about anything except this man who'd literally fought for their future. An hour later, Claire walked down an aisle of white roses while a string quartet played. Victor stood at the altar looking devastating in his tuxedo, and when she reached him, he took her hands and said vows that made half the guests cry. I promise to protect you, to cherish you, to love you with everything I am. I promise to feed you when you forget to eat, to hold you when you need comfort, and to stand between you and anything that would hurt you. I promise to be yours, completely and absolutely, for as long as I live. Claire said her own vows through happy tears, promising to love this complicated, dangerous, wonderful man for the rest of her life. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, Victor kissed her like he was claiming her in front of God and everyone present, and Claire kissed him back with everything she had. The reception was beautiful. Dinner under string lights in the garden, dancing, champagne, Anya's incredible cake. But the moment Claire treasured most came later, when she and Victor snuck away from their own party to stand on a balcony overlooking the grounds. Happy? Victor asked, pulling her back against his chest, his arms wrapped around her waist. Deliriously. Claire leaned into him, watching their guests dancing below. Though I still can't believe you fist-fought someone in a suit that expensive. I have more suits. I only have one you. He pressed a kiss to her temple. Speaking of which, I have a wedding present for you. Victor, you've already given me everything. Not this. He pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket. Open it. Inside was a deed. It took Claire a moment to understand what she was looking at, and when she did, she turned to stare at him. You bought the library? Not the public library. That would be impossible. But the building next to it came up for sale. I thought you might like to open a rare bookshop. Somewhere you can work with the books you love, on your own terms, without having to answer to anyone. Victor smiled. Unless you'd rather do something else. The building is yours either way. Claire couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. This man had given her safety, love, a future. And now he was giving her back her passion, her purpose, in a way that was entirely her own. "I love you," she finally managed. "I love you so much, it terrifies me sometimes." "Good." Victor turned her in his arms so they were face to face. "Because you're stuck with me now, Mrs. Volkoff. For better or worse." "I think we've already covered the worst part," Claire said, thinking about grocery stores and bruises and men with guns. "Everything from here is better." "I'll hold you to that." Victor kissed her, slow and deep and full of promise. "Come on, we should get back before Anya sends out a search party." They walked back to their reception hand in hand, and Claire thought about how strange life was. How 6 months ago she'd been a woman with bruises hidden under turtlenecks, and no hope for escape. How she'd fainted in a grocery store and woken up in the arms of a dangerous man who'd become her salvation. She'd crossed paths with a ruthless Mafia boss, and he'd given her everything she never knew she needed: safety, love, a future worth fighting for. And as Victor spun her onto the dance floor, and Anya beamed at them from the edge of the crowd, and string lights twinkled overhead like stars, Claire Morgan Volkoff smiled. She'd gone looking for milk and bread. She'd found home instead.